Let's walk through the flowchart of what we're going to be doing today. The purpose of recrystallization is to purify our product, so we'll have desired compound and a soluble impurity in a small test tube. The reason why we want to use a small test tube is because the small test tubes in lab are capable of going through hot and cold without cracking. So you can put it in boiling hot water and then instantly put it in ice without it breaking. So we add the minimum amount of hot solvent to dissolve our compound, and then we let it cool down and it will crystallize out of solution. Then we can run it through a Hirsch funnel and obtain a desired compound. This is the saturated solution, so you could use this liquid to wash out your small test tube to obtain as much product as possible. You could also use cold solvent to wash out your test tube. Let's talk about choosing the right solvent. The product should be insoluble in the solvent at room temperature, but it should be soluble at high temperatures. So when we heat it up, it should dissolve somewhat easily. The impurities should be soluble at room temperature and or at higher temperatures so that they don't form with the crystals. And then in lab, we usually use Legroin or PET ether as a solvent for recrystallizing our alcohols. And then we use ethanol and sometimes some water to recrystallize our acids. For the example today, we'll be using Legroin to recrystallize the alcohol from the Cannizzaro reaction. So we've just obtained our crude product by evaporating the methylene chloride. Now we're placing it in a small test tube. Now let's talk about the solvent. We're going to be using Legroin or PET ether to recrystallize the alcohol. This is a useful solvent for alcohol because it is insoluble at low temperatures but soluble at high temperatures. With Pasteur Pipette, we can start adding some into a separate test tube and then heat it up using boiling hot water. After a few swirls, we add the minimum amount of hot Legroin required to dissolve the alcohol. Before adding more solvent, place it in boiling hot water, and this should dissolve it. Before recrystallizing at room temperature, place it in an ice cold water bath to ensure it precipitates out of solution. If it does not precipitate, this means we have added too much solvent and we need to boil it off. After it has precipitated, we can place it in the boiling hot water again, dissolve it, and then let it recrystallize at room temperature. Recrystallizing at room temperature allows the crystals to form correctly. If we recrystallize too fast or in the ice cold water, it traps the impurities within the crystals and it causes us to have an impure product. After we have waited 10 or 15 minutes, we can place it in ice cold water to obtain any last crystal formations. And then we can filter the crystals with the Hirsch funnel. The small test tube can be rinsed with cold Legroin to obtain as much product as possible. These crystals are ready to get weighed and characterized.